Aloha.
Aloha.
I have spoken to the Kiwanis Club here in the islands, and I have spoken to Masonic lodges, and as you know, I would not speak to these groups on religion, and yet I'm sure you don't really believe that there was a single moment when religion wasn't embodied in those talks. And of course, that's the actual truth. There never has been a talk from me, through me, that wasn't on religion, even when the word religion, God, Christ, truth, metaphysics wasn't even used in the talk. And of course, it is that way when Don was in the, Don Blanding was in the Northwest. He was on the same platform with me, and or rather on the same platform that I was on, and at the same time. And his subject was always from his books of poetry, and rarely did he say anything that sounded like religion. But there wasn't anybody fooled for a minute. There was plenty of religion there. And that is the great lesson that we are learning today, that religion has less to do with speech and church and services and what the world calls worship than it has to do with an attitude of being or a mode of life. Without any question, the one question that is asked most frequently, it always has been through the many, many years in this work, is why is it that after so many years of study, I still have so many problems? I know all the truth. I can give a wonderful treatment. I know everything that's in the books. But I have such difficulties in healing or being healed, and I still have so many problems. And others even go to the extent of saying that they never miss a service at church, or that they do church work and still have these problems. And the answer, from my standpoint, is always the same. What you know of truth and the service that you give back through your church work in truth, these are only steps on the way. They are not truth itself. They are not the healing agency. They are not the Christ. They are only steps leading up. Now, we have learned that students who seriously study spiritual writings develop a degree of this spiritual consciousness, Christ consciousness, spiritual awareness. Some who are willing to study harder and practice what they study will go even further and develop a deeper degree of that consciousness. And those who have or hear lectures, attend classes, can go even further and deeper into consciousness. And so, progressively, we have learned that just as going to movies in the old days gave us a certain amount of pleasure, even when they were silent, that pleasure multiplied itself when we could hear. It didn't merely double our entertainment value, it multiplied it time and time and time again, to be able both to see and to hear. And so we have learned in our work that the reading, the seeing of the message, and the hearing of the message, whether in the form of the lectures or classes or recordings, multiplied the depth and degree of our awareness. So we learn that as we come into what one of the old mystics has called association with the saints, or in Christian scripture has been called of the household of God, as we not only read and hear, but come together with each other on the path, we develop a still greater awareness and consciousness, and you will see the reason for that quickly. In our coming together, there is nothing of selfishness. We are not here to gain something of each other. We are not here to get something from each other. We are here in the sense of coming together in God, in truth, where two or more are gathered together in my name, in the nature of the Christ. There am I with you. And so you see, we come together here, having left our problems outside, and desiring nothing of each other, seeking nothing from each other, having nothing in mind of economic gain, fame, fortune. All of these, let us call them personal and temporal ideas or thoughts, have been left outside, and we have come together in selflessness, purely in the desire to imbibe that living waters, the bread of life, the wine of inspiration, the hidden manna. That's why we're here. And that is why there is a depth of the spirit here, a depth of consciousness, because we are all here in an atmosphere of listening, opening consciousness for the inflow of the divine word. Why do we want that word? Why do we seek it? Because it is the bread of life, because it is the wine of inspiration, because it is the waters that spring into life eternal. That's why we want it. We have come to a state of consciousness wherein we learn that we did not find our satisfaction in the outer world because we were living by bread alone. We were living by outer forms. We were seeking our good in money, fame, reputation, or we were seeking it in family life or community life. We were seeking it in outer activities, and There isn't a one here who hasn't found that even having achieved them, there was still a hunger and there was still a thirst. There was not a satisfaction. There never is a satisfaction. In attaining the million, there is always the horror at the idea of our neighbor who has attained 2 million. Attaining 10 million, there is always that inferiority complex in realizing that Rockefeller and Ford attained 1 billion. In attaining the presidency, there is always the fear that we may not equal the man who had 2 terms. And with 2 terms, sometimes comes that unholy desire to have 3 and 4. Why not 5 and 6, or the dictatorship? Since nothing attained in the outer world ever gives satisfaction. Nothing attained in the outer world forms completeness. Nothing. We have discovered that. We have all had a measure of family life and found that even when it was good, it wasn't complete or completely satisfying. It left still a void, a hunger. Some have attained a measure of fame or fortune and have still found that it did not constitute their completeness. And so we have come here for living waters, for the bread of life, for the meat that the world knows nothing of, hidden manna. And we keep coming back because we found almost from the beginning that we did find a measure of that peace that passeth understanding, a measure of that supply that doesn't leave us an hungered. Jesus told the Hebrews that their ancestors had eaten of manna and yet hungered. That is our lesson. We and our ancestors have eaten of the tree of life. We have eaten of a measure of the world's goods, but we have become an hungered again. At that point where the Master multiplied loaves and fishes and fed his Hebrew brethren, he thought that he had fulfilled a great mission, only to find the next day that they followed him across the sea. And when he sought to know why, received the answer that they wanted more loaves and fishes. I fed you yesterday. Yes, now you've come again for loaves and fishes. Didn't you see yesterday that I gave you not only loaves and fishes, but the principle of life? When I give you the principle of life, you can never hunger again. Ah, yes, I can give it, but you must accept it. And yesterday you didn't. Now today I feed you again. I think there are only records of the Master having fed the multitude 3 times. If I feed you 3 times and you do not learn this principle, then it's time that I go away in order that the Comforter may come to you. It is right and it is fitting that we come together in the search of this principle. It is even right that those who set themselves up or who are set up as teachers, instructors, practitioners, should grant unto you, give unto you healings, supply, feeding, the water of life continuously until you have had the opportunity and the grace of God to receive and understand the principle itself. Now that is why there is a depth of spiritual wisdom and spiritual consciousness in our groups coming together. They do not come together to glorify a religion, a teaching, or a teacher. They do not come together to build edifices to show forth their religion. Our groups come together to eat and drink from the spiritual source of all good. And we come together sometimes in homes like this, and sometimes on lanais and out in gardens, and sometimes in halls, wherever a hall may be secured. We are not too particular where that hall may be or what its surroundings may be, except that if it is possible, we would rather have an atmosphere of cleanliness and of flowers and of trees. But where that isn't necessary, we meet in halls and cities and on busy city streets and in hotel rooms and even in hotel bedrooms, because we haven't come to glorify place or person, but we have come together to drink these living waters, eat this hidden manna, eat this meat that the world knows nothing of, and to sit at the feet of the Master, of the Christ, of the revelation of truth within our being. And so remember that the reading, the studying, and the practice of the Word, the hearing of the Word in the ear, and the personal contact with the teacher all have but one object: the deepening and ripening of individual consciousness, of yours, that you in turn may go and do likewise. Now, the answer to that question, why do we study so many years and have so many problems, is that the study has been entirely in the realm of the mind. The heart hasn't been opened. The soul faculties haven't been opened. The soul capacities haven't been touched. And Paul, in his great wisdom, saw that the letter killeth. If you actually rely on what you read and on what you can recite, in the end it will destroy you. It will destroy you by not healing you, by not lifting you up. If you use these messages of truth in order to open your own consciousness, then will you find that it will not be years, it will only be days or weeks or months when the spiritual flow will come from within your own being. Now, we are living in a new age, and more particularly in a new religious age, an age of a new religious presentation. And not new in the sense of modern, new only in the sense of renewal. Since it is the same message that you will find if you go to the heart of Lao Tse's teaching, you will find that it was an impartation of the Spirit from him to his disciple Chung Tzu. And you will find that he in turn had a disciple, in fact two. And if you go from there to India, you will find that this experience was the opening of the divine consciousness, the spiritual center of one Gautama, and that through this enlightenment he became the Buddha, or the enlightened one. But very quickly he drew unto himself disciples, and Buddha's enlightenment served to open the soul centers and the soul capacities of these men who were his disciples, and soon they were out in the world with students of their own, and in turn they enlightened others. You will find that in the history of Paul there were several who received illumination through him. And then we have a long, barren spiritual history until we come to the 12th and 13th centuries. In these intervening years, there are a few who attain the status of mystics. That is, there are a few who attain their conscious union with God, their conscious oneness with God. They today are called saints, St. Augustine and St. Teresa, St. Lawrence, and so forth and so on. But they were individuals, and because of the circumstances of their day, they had to become part of a religious organization, and while they were permitted to live their union with God, they had no disciples, no students, no one to send out into the world. And so we have this long period until we come to what is called the age of Western mysticism, and that runs from about 1200 A.D. to about 1700. And there again you find the same old trend. You will find Jacob Boehme, Eckhart, Tauler, Fox, and you will find that one receives illumination from another. The one, like Eckhart, who was virtually the great master of his particular era, and then the disciples who go out from that and receive their illumination either through a direct contact with him or through contact with one of those who had received it from him. And so we have another great religious period in which people met as we are meeting. They met sometimes in homes, sometimes in gardens, sometimes in churches, wherever they could meet. And just like the 300-year period after the Master, it was the easiest, most normal and natural thing for anyone just to reach up their thought and touch the Christ within their own being, because the Master had revealed and demonstrated the omnipresence of the Christ for all men. And so anyone turning to the Spirit within could touch and reach the same Christ. So in our days of the Western mystics, hundreds, literally thousands of people drew their good merely from turning to the Spirit of God within them, the Spirit that had been revealed and opened by Eckhart or a dozen of others who had received their light directly or indirectly from him. But it made this light available to anyone and everyone who could open their consciousness within and feel the activity and the presence of the Christ. Now we are again in that kind of an age. We are again in an age where a certain amount of light, of spiritual revelation, has been given to us through this infinite way. It is again a teaching, a restatement of the truth that the kingdom of God is within you, and that you have within you this hidden manna, this meat that the world knows not of, these springs of life eternal, waters of life, that you have these within you. They are actually symbolic of your spiritual capacities, your spiritual faculties. Now, these have been opened in me to the extent that through me healing, supply, spiritual enrichment, enlightenment takes place. Ah, yes, but others have received this, and through contact with them, the same healings, the same supplying, the same comforting does come. And so, in this age, it is being revealed that you, or anyone, who turns to the Father within you, who turns to the spiritual kingdom within you, can tap and touch this same Christ that I bring you today in the writings and on the recordings. You, through the writings and the recordings, the classes and the lectures, have available to you the Christ of your own being. And as these spiritual centers are opened in you, as these spiritual faculties are opened in you, you become the light unto those of your household, unto those of your community, unto those of the nation. You become that in proportion as you have the spiritual faculties opened in you. Now, we do not proselyte, nor do we urge this teaching or salvation upon those who are not receptive and responsive to it, and for this reason. The Master told us that there are 3 states of consciousness. One, he said, was barren. And of course, you see, no matter how much spiritual seed you plant in barren soil, you will never reap spiritual fruitage. Spirituality, healings, harmony, these will not evolve from barren soil. These people will respond to physical help and sometimes to mental, but not to spiritual. And then there are those for shallow soil, and in those you plant your seeds, and they have demonstrations, they have healings, but along comes a sort of a serious problem, a deep problem, a hot wind from the south, a cold wind from the north, a freeze here and there, and their whole demonstration goes by the board and they go back to their old ways again. And then there are those whom God has led to the point of receptivity to truth. There are those who, through some inner spiritual preparation, not to their own credit, not that they themselves have brought it about, it's grace, the divine grace of God. The divine grace of God has given it to some to be spiritually alive and spiritually receptive. Those who are shallow are on the way, and in some future time may be fertile soil. Those who are barren will wait a long, long time, and they may become shallow and then deeply spiritual. No one is cast into outer darkness. It's only that some are ready today. Some will not be ready for 10 years. Some may not be ready for 100 years. And so rather than go out and try to sow our seeds wildly, wasting our energies in the barren and in the shallow, we are more intent on bringing to light the depth of spiritual wisdom and consciousness within us, so that those who are being prepared and are ready for what we have will be led to us. Those the Master called those of my own household. I am sent only to those of my own household. It often surprises people to know that a woman went to the Master and asked for healing for her child, and the master refused it. Doesn't sound possible, does it? But he did. And he refused it because he said, I am sent only to those of my own household. Well, of course, this particular lady was so ready. She was so discerning of the Christ in him that she beseeched him and begged him and pleaded with him. And of course, because of the very depth of that, he gave her the healing that she sought. And there's another experience of the woman at the well of Samaria who was surprised that the master would even speak to her, because, why, the Hebrews have nothing to do with us Samaritans. They don't even talk to us, much more give us of their religious wisdom. But he too discerned in her a depth of spiritual preparedness, and even though she was a Samaritan, he gave her of his pearl. Now, he warned us, however, don't throw your pearls before swine. Don't let them be trampled upon. And so it isn't whether or not a person is a Hebrew or a Christian or Mohammedan or Buddhist that determines whether or not they are ready for our message. What determines it is their individual receptivity. We don't care what religion they've been brought up in, or what country, or church, or race, or clime. We care little about the color of their skin. But what concerns us is the degree of their receptivity to what we have. And here is the reason. This is the depth of the message. Our security and our safety and our peace and our satisfaction is not to be found in persons or things, nor is our health found in things or circumstances or climates. Our good is found in what to the world is an intangible, the Spirit of God in us, the Christ of our being. We find our supply, we find our satisfaction, our health, our joy in the kingdom of God within us. We turn within, to the withinness of each other at first, and later to the withinness of our own being, and there find that which is to appear outwardly as the very health of our flesh, the very dollars of our bank account, the very homes in which we live, the very companionships. And you know, should there ever again be a time of war or panic or desolation, we will find our safety and security not in bomb-proof shelters, but in this very self-same Spirit within us. Did you know that the same Spirit that raised up Jesus Christ from the dead will quicken also your mortal bodies? Did you know that the same Spirit that was in Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob raised up the impotent man at the temple gate beautiful through John and Peter? Did you know that the same Spirit of the Hebrew prophets of old was the Spirit of Jesus Christ and Paul and John in Christianity? Did you know that the Master said, before Abraham was, I am? In other words, Abraham, who was the father of the Hebrew race, before there was a father of the Hebrew race, before there was a Hebrew race, this same Spirit of God, this same Christ existed. It must have existed in Egypt then, and in India, and in China, and in Japan, because those were the places that existed before Abraham was. And so before Abraham was, before there was a Hebrew race, this very Spirit of God existed. And certainly the Hebrew race came long before the Christian era. Now you see the universality of that Spirit, which is the healing activity in our consciousness, which is the multiplying powers, that which multiplied loaves and fishes, that which produced manna through Moses and water out of the rocks, that which made food appear through a raven, or even baked on the coals, on the stones. All of that is an activity of the Spirit of God, which has existed since before the world began, and which the Master said will be with us unto the end of the world. Before Abraham was, I am, and I am with you unto the end of the world. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Now that makes it a matter of the present, doesn't it? Before Abraham and unto the end of the world, a continuous state of being, which means it's here now. It's here now within us. And grace is given unto me that I may, through the Spirit of God, through the depth of realization that has come to me, I may awaken in you this Christ, the Spirit of God, the spiritual activity, so that you in turn may go out from this room and be this same law of love, this same law of life, unto all who will turn to you, all those who are of your household, all those who are of your state of consciousness, all those who come to you and say, pray for me, or give me a treatment, or give me help. All who come to you, you can satisfy. Do not turn them away. Do not say, I haven't enough in my house. Be rather like the woman in the experience of Elijah. We have only a cruse with a few drops of oil. If you will just acknowledge that you have that, the Christ in you will multiply it so that your cruse of oil will never run dry. So when someone comes to you for help, never say, I have an insufficiency, or please go to my practitioner, but always say, I have a few drops of spiritual oil which is sufficient for you. And then watch, as you dispense that oil, that it will multiply and multiply through use. The more you use of the oil of inspiration, the more you use of the hidden manna within you, the more you use of the 5 barley loaves and a few fishes, the more you find that the activity of the Christ in you will multiply them, so that you may say, from this moment on, that every demand that is made upon you for spiritual help, you can meet. You have in your house, in your consciousness, 5 barley loaves and a few fishes and a few drops of oil. And you have within you the Spirit or presence of God, the multiplier. And so begin to give of the little that you have, and more will be added unto you. But deny that you have this little, and the little that you have will soon be taken from you. And so it is, you begin on the spiritual plane, and give the best treatment you know how, using such statements of truth as you can remember, developing the degree of spiritual awareness possible to you today, and never belittling it, never undervaluing it, never underestimating it. because the few drops of oil and the 5 barley loaves and the few fish are always sufficient for any given moment. And whatever more is necessary will be multiplied by the use of what we already have. Does that make clear to you our Master's statement that to him that hath shall be given, and to him that hath not shall be taken even the little that he hath? To him that hath a few drops of oil in his cruse, to him that hath a few barley loaves and a few fishes, will be multiplied, and multiplied through use. And to him that declares he has an insufficiency will be taken even the little that he hath. Now, our reliance is not upon that which is in the visible universe. You may go out of these doors and witness the many coconuts and the many papayas and the many pineapple, and go to the sea and witness the many fish. But as you do, realize, thank you, Father, my dependence is not upon these, but upon the invisible principle that produced these. You may write a story. You may write a play. You may write a book. And think that you have done much. And then find that what you receive for it is only enough for this summer, or this winter, or next year. But you're going to be faced again with the same problem next year. Don't look to your story, to your book, to your play, to your treatment of today or your healing of today for tomorrow's manna. Look to the invisible source. That is the principle of the message of the infinite way. Look to the invisible presence and power that produced the manna for today. Look to the invisible presence and power that produced those few drops of oil in the widow's cruse. Look to the principle that produced 5 barley loaves and a few fishes. Then you will find that you will multiply your good, whether a supply, home, harmony, companionship, fellowship, practice, student body, whatever avenue of life you are turned to will be productive. You will be fruitful. You will be successful. You will be joyous, if so be you are looking to the invisible principle of all that appears. We have it that the substance, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Now do you see that we too, through the infinite way, have a faith or understanding of an invisible principle that knows no such thing as religious bounds. We don't care whether you use this in the Catholic Church or the Christian Science Church or Unity or New Thought. We care little where you use it or how. What we present to you is the fact that anyone on earth may have recourse to the invisible source of good in a church around. Our God is one God, universal, impersonal, impartial, ever available, omnipresent, before Abraham, here and now, and even unto eternity. Learn, oh learn, oh learn this great principle of the infinite way, so that it will never be necessary to say, if I go not away, the Comforter cannot come to you. Let me be ever present with you, and share with you all that the Father gives unto me, but let me so awaken it in you that you may go forth and serve your household, your community, your universe in that same way. Be not concerned for those who do not receive healing, or for those who cannot accept what you have, that is not your concern. Be concerned only to maintain your relationship with God. Your responsibility solely is to maintain your relationship with God, your conscious union with God, so that you ever have access to the invisible source, the multiplying source, and then share it liberally with those who are led to you, who come to you. That alone is your responsibility. And you see that it is possible to give this message not only to a group of students who knowingly come to hear the Word of God, but do you not see how this message could be clothed in Don Blanding's poetry, or Alan Boone's Letters to Strongheart, or somebody else's message given in another way? Oh, yes. Yes, there are many, many ways of telling the world that there is an invisible source of life, of protection, of peace, of harmony, of security, without ever using religious terminology. We use it primarily because it is our background. We use it because we were taught this terminology and love the religious aspect of it, and therefore we present it in this way. But oh, the marvelous lessons of this invisible that has been given to the world by Alan Boone through his relationship with his dog, Strongheart. And how much of this beauty and revelation is given by men like Blanding and others who tell of the beauty at the center of your being, who tell of the divine grace, of the bounty of the seas, and who reveal in so many ways the peace that passes understanding is to be found only within you. Only within you. Now you see that Scripture and writings and recordings and classes and teachers are the means and the instruments. Oh yes, 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 somewhere I call it a bridge. These all form a bridge over which you travel to get to the promised land. And when you've traveled over this bridge, where do you find yourself? Within your very own being. You find yourself at one with God. This clarifies for you that I and the Father are one, and all that the Father hath is mine, and the place whereon I stand is holy ground. Over and over in my writings and recordings, you will find these passages. Do you see why? Because always your attention must come back to the place that what you are seeking is not to be found anywhere external to your own being. In the end, you must come back to the realization, even though you travel over the books and over the recordings and over the teachers, in the end, you must always come back to the realization, I'm thinking now of the many stories of the Holy Grail. And if you remember, there have always been men of deep religious conviction who set out to travel all over this world to find that wonderful Holy Grail, the cup the Master drank out of. And isn't it a marvelous thing to know that in every one of those stories, the seeker failed and came back to his own home, his own starting place, sank down on the ground in despair, and then looked up and saw it in a tree in his backyard. This was all symbolic of the great truth that men have always gone to Mecca or to Rome or to Jerusalem, only to find that the Master said, "No longer shall ye worship in this holy mountain, nor yet in Jerusalem, but in spirit and in truth." And so you will travel around my books and my recordings and my classes, only to find in the end that I have quoted 1,000 times, "The kingdom of God is within you. The place whereon you stand is holy ground. I and the Father are one, and all that the Father hath is mine, because I and the Father are here and now. Thou seest me, thou seest the Father that sent me, for I and the Father are one." Aloha.